The rain pelted against the windshield, each drop a miniature explosion in the deafening silence of the night. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles had turned white, matching the ghostly pallor of my face reflected in the rearview mirror. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, terribly, horrifyingly wrong. It had started as a typical Portland evening, the perpetual drizzle, the mist rolling in from the Willamette River, the streets glistening under the yellow glow of street lamps. I, Michael, a 25-year-old software developer, was driving home after a late night at the office. The clock on my dashboard blinked 11:43 p.m. Little did I know that in mere minutes, my life would spiral into a nightmare from which I might never wake. The first sign that something was amiss came when my radio suddenly crackled to life, emitting a bone-chilling howl that sent shivers down my spine. I fumbled with the dial, trying to turn it off, but the sound persisted, growing louder and more ominous with each passing second. Then out of nowhere, a massive shape hurtled across the road in front of my car. I slammed on the brakes, tires screeching against the wet asphalt. My heart pounded in my chest as I struggled to make sense of what I'd just seen. It was too big to be a dog, too fast to be a bear. And those eyes, those glowing amber eyes that had locked onto mine for a split second as it passed, they were filled with an intelligence that was decidedly inhuman. I sat there, engine idling, rain drumming on the roof, trying to convince myself that I was just tired, that my mind was playing tricks on me. But deep down, I knew. I knew that what I had seen was real and that my life was about to change forever. With trembling hands, I put the car back into drive and continued down the deserted street. The houses on either side seemed to loom over me, their darkened windows like vacant eyes staring into the night. The trees lining the sidewalk swayed in the wind, their branches reaching out like gnarled fingers, ready to snatch me from the relative safety of my vehicle. I was only a few blocks from home when I heard it, a low guttural growl that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. I pressed down harder on the accelerator, my eyes darting frantically from the road to the rearview mirror and back again. That's when I saw it. A massive wolf-like creature, easily 7 feet tall when standing on its hind legs, was keeping pace with my car. Its fur was matted and dark, glistening with rain and something else. Something that looked disturbingly like blood. Its muzzle was pulled back in a snarl, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth that glinted in the dim light. I let out a scream of pure terror and floored the gas pedal. The engine roared as I sped through the empty streets, taking corners so fast I thought the car might flip. But no matter how fast I went, the creature was always there, just at the edge of my vision, those burning amber eyes never leaving me. In my panic, I took a wrong turn and found myself heading away from the safety of the city center and towards Forest Park. The streetlights became fewer and farther between, plunging me into near-total darkness, broken only by my headlights and the occasional flash of lightning. As I approached the park entrance, my worst fears were realized. The creature, this werewolf, leaped onto the hood of my car with such force that the metal buckled beneath its weight. I lost control, the car spinning wildly before crashing into a tree at the side of the road. For a moment, everything was silent except for the hiss of steam rising from the crumpled engine and the steady patter of rain. Then, slowly, terrifyingly, I heard the scrape of claws on metal as the creature moved across the roof of the car. With shaking hands, I unbuckled my seatbelt and tried to open the door, but it was jammed. I was trapped. Tears of fear streamed down my face as I heard the werewolf's heavy breathing just outside my window. Suddenly, the window exploded inward in a shower of glass. A massive, clawed hand reached in, groping for me. I pressed myself against the opposite door, my mind blank with terror. The werewolf's face appeared in the broken window, its hot breath fogging the remaining glass. Those eyes, those terrible amber eyes, stared at me with a mixture of hunger and, was that amusement? In that moment, I knew I had to fight. With a surge of adrenaline, I grabbed the nearest object, a heavy flashlight from the glove compartment, and swung it with all my might at the creature's snout. There was a satisfying crunch and a howl of pain. The werewolf recoiled, giving me precious seconds to kick out the windshield and crawl out onto the hood. Rain lashed at my face as I stumbled to my feet, my whole body shaking with fear and cold. I looked around wildly, trying to get my bearings. The dense trees of Forest Park loomed before me, offering a slim chance of escape. Without a second thought, I plunged into the darkness of the forest. I ran like I had never run before, branches whipping at my face, roots threatening to trip me with every step. Behind me, I could hear the werewolf crashing through the underbrush, its enraged howls echoing through the night. The sound spurred me on, pushing me past the limits of my endurance. Time lost all meaning as I fled deeper into the forest. My lungs burned, my legs ached, but still I ran. The rain had soaked me to the bone, making me shiver uncontrollably. But I didn't dare stop. I knew that to stop meant death, or worse. Just when I thought I couldn't go on any longer, I stumbled into a small clearing. In the center stood an old, dilapidated cabin. It looked like it hadn't been used in years, but right then, it was the most beautiful sight I had ever seen. I sprinted towards it, praying that the door wasn't locked. To my immense relief, the door swung open with a creak. I darted inside and slammed it shut behind me, frantically searching for something to barricade it with. An old heavy table stood against one wall. With strength born of desperation, I dragged it in front of the door. No sooner had I done this than something slammed against the door with tremendous force. The whole cabin shook, dust raining down from the rafters. I backed away, looking around frantically for a weapon, anything I could use to defend myself. The werewolf's claws raked against the door, leaving deep gouges in the wood. Each impact made the table slide a little further across the floor. It was only a matter of time before the creature broke through. In the dim light filtering through the grimy windows, I spotted something that made my heart leap. An old shotgun hanging on the wall. I grabbed it, praying that it was loaded. The weight of it in my hands gave me a small measure of comfort. Just then, the door exploded inward, the table flying across the room as if it weighed nothing. And there, silhouetted against the stormy night sky, stood the werewolf. It was even more terrifying up close. Saliva dripped from its jaws, mixing with the rain that matted its fur. Its chest heaved with each breath, and those eyes burned with an unholy hunger. I raised the shotgun, my hands shaking so badly I could barely aim. The werewolf let out a bone-chilling howl and lunged towards me. I pulled the trigger. The blast was deafening in the confined space of the cabin. The werewolf was thrown backward, crashing into the doorframe with a yelp of pain. But to my horror, it quickly regained its footing. The shotgun had wounded it, but it wasn't enough to stop the creature. I pumped the shotgun and fired again, and again. Each blast pushed the werewolf back, but it kept coming, driven by a rage and hunger that seemed to give it supernatural resilience. As I fired the last shell, I realized with growing dread that I was out of ammunition. The werewolf, bleeding from multiple wounds but still very much alive, seemed to sense my vulnerability. It stalked towards me, backing me into a corner. I held the now useless shotgun in front of me like a shield, knowing it would do little to protect me from the creature's savage attack. As the werewolf raised its clawed hand for what I was sure would be a killing blow, a bright light suddenly flooded the cabin. The creature whirled around, momentarily distracted. I heard shouts and more gunfire from outside. The werewolf, caught between its prey and this new threat, hesitated for a moment. Then, with one last hate-filled glare at me, it bounded out of the cabin and disappeared into the night. I slumped to the floor, my whole body shaking with relief and residual terror. Moments later, several armed men burst into the cabin. They were dressed in what looked like tactical gear, their faces grim and determined. "Are you all right, son?" one of them asked, helping me to my feet. I nodded mutely, still too shocked to speak. "You're lucky we got here when we did," another said, peering out into the darkness. "We've been tracking this thing for weeks." As they led me out of the cabin and towards their waiting vehicles, I finally found my voice. What was that thing?" I asked. Though deep down, I already knew the answer. The man who had helped me up gave me a long, measuring look. "Something that shouldn't exist," he said finally. "Something we've been fighting in secret for longer than you can imagine." As we drove away from Forest Park, leaving behind the scene of my nightmarish encounter, I couldn't shake the feeling that my life had irrevocably changed. The world I thought I knew had been torn away, revealing a darker, more terrifying reality beneath. The rain continued to fall as we sped through the empty streets of Portland. But now every shadow seemed to hide a potential threat. Every dark alley a possible lair for monsters I had once believed were only myths. I don't know what will happen next. Will they let me go home, pretend this never happened? Or am I now part of this secret war against the supernatural? One thing I do know, I'll never look at a full moon the same way again. And every time I hear a wolf howl in the distance, I'll remember the night I came face to face with the Werewolf of Portland. As we drove through the city, I couldn't help but wonder how many other people had encounters like mine. How many others had glimpsed the terrifying truth lurking beneath the surface of our everyday lives? And how many hadn't been as lucky as I was? The men who rescued me, I later learned they were part of a secret organization dedicated to tracking and neutralizing supernatural threats, took me to a nondescript building in the industrial part of town. Inside, it was a hive of activity, with people hunched over computers, studying maps, and cleaning an assortment of weapons that looked like they belonged in a sci-fi movie. They debriefed me for hours, asking me to recount every detail of my encounter with the werewolf. They were particularly interested in its behavior, its strengths, and any weaknesses I might have observed. I told them everything, reliving the terror of those moments in the forest and the cabin. As dawn broke, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, one of the men, who introduced himself as Agent Keller, sat down with me for a final conversation. "Michael," he said, his voice grave, "I know this has been a traumatic experience for you, but I need you to understand something. What you saw tonight, what you experienced, it's just the tip of the iceberg. There's a whole world out there that most people never see, never even suspect exists, and it's our job to keep it that way." I nodded, still trying to process everything that had happened. "So what happens now?" I asked. Agent Keller sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. "That's up to you. We can help you forget. Give you something that will make this all seem like a bad dream. You can go back to your life, your job, pretend none of this ever happened." I considered this for a moment. The thought of forgetting, of returning to my normal life, was tempting, but something inside me rebelled against the idea. "And the other option?" I asked. A small smile played at the corners of Keller's mouth. "The other option is you join us. Help us fight these things. Protect people who don't even know they need protecting. It's not an easy life, but it's an important one." I looked around the room at the men and women who had dedicated their lives to this secret war. I thought about how close I had come to death, how terrified I had been, but I also thought about how many other people might be out there right now, facing these horrors alone, with no one to help them. "I'm in," I said, my voice stronger than I expected. "I want to help." Keller nodded, looking both pleased and a little sad. "Welcome to the team then. Get some rest. Your training starts tomorrow." As I was led to a small room where I could sleep, I realized that my life had changed forever. The world I knew had been replaced by one filled with monsters and magic, danger and darkness. But also I realized it was a world where brave men and women fought back against that darkness, protecting humanity from threats they never even knew existed. I fell into an exhausted sleep, my dreams filled with amber eyes and howling winds. When I woke, I would begin my new life as a guardian against the supernatural, a protector of the unseen world. And somewhere out there, I knew, the Werewolf of Portland was still lurking, waiting for its next victim. But next time, I would be ready. Next time, I would be the hunter, not the hunted. The coming nights would bring new terrors, new challenges. But as I drifted off to sleep, I felt a strange mix of fear and excitement. The Werewolf of Portland had changed my life forever, opening my eyes to a hidden world of monsters and magic. And though the path ahead was fraught with danger, I knew I was where I needed to be. In the war against the supernatural, every night is a battle, every shadow a potential threat. But as long as there are those willing to stand against the darkness, there's hope. And I, Michael, once just an ordinary software developer, now stood ready to join that fight. The Werewolf of Portland may still be out there, but it's not just its prey that should be afraid, because now I'm coming for it, and I'm not alone.